One thing that I found out is that if it's a part of you, you're gonna miss it.
Yeah.
You're a better version of you when you're incorporating the things that you love as well as your kids. You don't have. I learned that you don't have to give up the things that you love. You just have to balance the time a little more.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I love playing the games, and even as I get older, I thought it would be something I put away. But the older I got, the more I realized it was a part of who I was, and it was
Yeah.
something that I enjoyed. I liked the way it made me feel, and I like the outlet. I like the camaraderie with the friends. And so I know moving forward, it's something that I hope, like I was saying, teach my children and bring them into rather than feel like I can't do it.
Hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard podcast.
We're the podcast that chronicles the past and the present of the fighting game community and bring on various perspectives from Arizona. This is episode 20. My name is Benny, also known as AK Grandmaster B. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host John, who I've heard has won a tournament at a gentleman's club.
Yeah, that occurred at our pre-show, and I'm definitely excited to talk about that with our guests today.
Cool. And we'll jump right into it, John. Who do we have on our show today?
For sure, yeah. We have two guests on today. We're going to have Corey and Yoshi on the show. Both of these gentlemen were part of the fighting game community when I started playing competitively, which is like around 2010. They were present at several events in the early Street Fighter 4 days, which is a really unique era because it was the first fighting game post Dark Ages that united several Arizona scenes. So like the Street Fighter guys picked up Street Fighter 4, the Marvel guys picked up Street Fighter 4, 3D, anime, Smash, you name it. It really united the Arizona scene in a lot of ways. And then you also have like the newbies like myself and Benny who started playing competitively in Street Fighter 4. So the Devastation crew ran several events in Arizona and were kind of like at the forefront of that big uniting era. And it was, for a lot of us, it was our first tournament experiences ever. My first tournament experiences ever. And for people from the Dark Ages, the first tournaments in a while. And there are several other achievements that team accomplished in that era. And I think it'd be best to have them tell the story themselves. So we're going to go ahead and bring them on real quick here. What's up, guys?
Hey.
So could you all give us like a brief intro of who you are? Corey, could you start?
Sure. So I'm Corey. I used to go by Makaveli. I played lots of games, Soul Calibur, pretty much any fighting game like most of us did back in the day. I think the probably the most notable ones out here are probably Soul Calibur 2 and CVS 2 for me.
Nice.
After that, kids come and all that, and it's all downhill from there. But nowadays, I'm thinking of pick up Street Fighter 6. I haven't played a lot in a while though. But Street Fighter 6, I'm in.
All right. That's cool. We get to play games again. How about you, Yoshi? You want to give us an intro of who you are?
Hey, my name's Horacio, but most people just call me Yoshi. That's kind of hard to pronounce for some people. I've just been around just as long as Corey. I started out in the old Pocket Change and Cyberstation days, for those that remember those days of Metro Center and Desert Sky or Westridge Mall. So
Nice.
I've been around for quite a while and just kind of still played games throughout that whole era, the Devastation era. And like Corey said, once family came, it kind of slowed down a little bit, but I still constantly play video games throughout the weekends and stuff like that.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to Street Fighter 6 just like everybody else. And I'm still actively playing Dragon Ball Fighters, Street Fighter, and those are pretty much my two games that I go to.
Don't forget about
Nice.
CVS 2.
Oh, yeah, CVS 2 at Corey's house.
I got an arcade cabinet here, so we got to keep it going.
Well, you have your own arcade cabinet there?
Yep, we both have our own little Japanese cabinets.
Yo, that's tight. And they're like connected together, so you each sit at your own cabinet?
Yeah, no, we
we
bought them. Yeah, we bought them together, but one is at my house and one is at Corey's house.
Yeah,
That's
we did
badass.
connect them though, and they're both at his house.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so one thing that's in common with both of your guys' intros is that you mentioned that you had kids, and then family took the priority, and that's a commonality with my co-host Benny here. And so I was kind of curious about what you all thought about being an FGC dad, and what's been unique about that.
Well, hopefully you can pass along the bug to your kids. Then you get to take that passion that you have and share it with your children is the fun thing. I know I tried. My kids like Call of Duty though, so despite my trying, my kids just didn't have the fighting game bug. They liked everything else but the fighting games. But you know, you just it's a time shift. Fighting games take time and dedication. At the end of the day, nothing is given for free. I know that you have natural skills, but man, all fighting games require time. And if you can't put in the time, sometimes you just can't get to where you'd like to be. And and it just can be discouraging, right? Depending on what you're going after. If you're trying to be the best, or if you're just trying to have fun. I always like to have fun, so for me, it was still a fun thing. Like Yo said, we still play. We always have, whether it's online or whatever. We're not tournament people anymore, but man, it's still in your blood. Our legs still get froggy, as we like to say, and just sometimes we need to fight it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It is that time that finding that right balance. That for me, I still play actively video games almost every day, or if not every other day. But it's 12, 11 at night because all the kids are in bed. The family time is over, and then that's like, okay, it's now for me to unwind. I sit there and play some Street Fighter. I sit there and play some Dragon Ball. Like that unwinds me. I've been playing a lot of Third Strike lately. I've been hooked on that for a while. Third Strike's my favorite game, so I'm constantly playing that sucker.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, my situation was a little different because I had my youngest. I had three. My son was born in '09, and that's when I started in the FGC.
Yeah.
So for me, like I basically incorporated my family into the whole FGC thing. Like I had them at the tournaments and stuff like that, and I don't know. It's just kind of been my thing. Like I don't know if other people kind of looked at me and were just like, man, who's this guy bringing his kids in here? But they're well behaved, and they're not jumping on people and messing with people when they're in their matches, walking in front of the stream setup and stuff like that. So all in all, like people like if you've been to TGZ or the tournaments and stuff, or even like the big like rewired stuff, undefeated, like my family's there with me. So a lot of people are just like they know my kids and stuff for like helping out or whatever.
Yeah, and it's good that the kids are there and they enjoy it. Like Corey said, like his kids can't play. Like I got lucky, my kid still plays, so I actually get matches in with my eldest. His name's Dexter. So I get matches with Dexter and Dragon Ball all the time. So it's pretty fun. And then I actually showed him a little bit of Street Fighter 4 because he was like, "Oh, this game's pretty cool." I was like, "I know a thing or two about that game." So showed him
just a little bit, just a little bit,
just a little bit, just a little bit.
Personally, I'm in full support of kids coming out. I love that you can bring your kids out if they want to go out, and you have a partner that supports that as well, and you can get the family out. I love seeing more of that. I love that stuff. I think that it brings your family together. I think it's important for your kids to see those aspects of their parents too. To see that their parents have hobbies and healthy hobbies, and the interactions and everything. So all together, I think it's incredibly healthy. I love it.
Yeah, I've been really lucky because my wife's been like super supportive. Like there was a tournament here, like an invitational that I was part of, the B League that Abe held, and that was actually on my anniversary of all days. And she was just like, you go play your tournament, and I ended up winning, and then we celebrated afterwards.
Oh
So
yeah,
it
worked
that's
out.
to have that, like everything works out with that. And then like I lucked out too because like my son, he plays fighting games, like he played Dragon Ball. Like I'm trying to get him to Street Fighter. He's kind of like here and there depending on the game, but he does like CVS too. Like that was on at the TGZ cab, so he's jumped on that. I think he likes the team aspect and like multiple characters. So that's something I gotta learn. So maybe I'll learn from one of you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, you're always welcome to come down and join one of our sessions.
Nice.
Now, before we move on, and while we're talking about the kids, I do want to call attention to the video feed for our audio folks. Corey, aka Makaveli, is currently sitting illuminated behind blue lights in a room, and my understanding is that's your son's room.
That is correct. Yeah.
So that's a Call of Duty player's room, basically.
That's why actually this one likes Fortnite too.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
One of my sons is Call of Duty. One of my sons is Fortnite.
Nice. Actually, yeah. How many? So you have two sons, and I think I met your daughter once.
Girl.
Okay, very cool.
I got an 18-year-old boy. I have a 14-year-old is my daughter Alexis, and my 7-year-old is my son Gunner.
Very cool.
So No more though. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm done too.
Yeah,
Also,
he
Benny,
kept going.
I love them,
Benny,
but no more.
I had no idea, Benny, that your son was born in '09. Like, G is an actual like true '09er then, huh?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yep.
Nice. Well, that's actually like a good segue into like being an '09er, because that's around the time period that I was curious about for well, actually, no. Now I think about it, we're talking about origins of Devastation and what is Devastation. Like, we've talked about the events, but I'm curious about who the group is behind it.
Well, so it started. The first year was 2004, and it was pretty much Rob and his buddy Darren, who did most of the stuff, most of the legwork. And I know myself and Yoshi that year. The only thing I did was just do some TO. I showed up to Devastation like everybody else at Rob's house. He already had everything, pretty much set up and had it all planned, but he didn't really have any TOs. So, I did a few tournaments, and I think Yoshi did, and that's kind of was the start of it. Was just the first year offering to help run tournaments.
Okay.
And then when he did it the next year, he kind of reached out ahead of time and was like, "Hey, are you interested in running some brackets again this year?" At which point I said, "Yeah." And that was really the start of kind of how it started. Back in '04 and '05 was just kind of just stepping up and helping, and then getting the invite back. And in the beginning, it was really the bulk of it was mostly Rob and Darren. Honestly, Rob is the one who did the meetings, called the places. He did a lot of legwork, like an incredible amount of work for sure.
And the Rob that we're talking about is Jedi Rob Chirini,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Correct.
yeah. Devastation was ultimately his dream. He did it, started out of his own home, himself, and incurred all the expenses and costs just for the love of the community.
Yep.
It wasn't really. I think it was a hope that it got as big as it did, but in the beginning, it really wasn't what it was. It was just his passion for games and kind of wanting to run a tournament.
Yep. We
And
used to just hang out, and then all of a sudden we just wanted to just start doing some tournaments because there were so many people hanging out. Like, let's just run a tournament. There's enough people to do it, and then that idea just started grew and grew, and then we just got that phone call, and we showed up at Rob's house, and he had already all kinds of setups and stuff that he had already
Sure.
just kind of thought of himself, and we just showed up to a normal like, hey, let's go hang out at Rob's and play some games, and it was a tournament.
Nice.
And then it grew from there.
My inner TO here is tingling, and I'm like, what in 2004 and 2005, like Challenge and Smash.gg and whatnot, and Tournamento, those weren't really a thing. So, like, how did you guys run your brackets back then?
old school pieces
On
of paper
paper.
printed out.
Good
Yeah,
old
and
paper.
you had to know where it went. Good old paper.
Yeah,
You actually had
paper.
to know how to read a bracket, and you had to know where the proper loser went on which side.
It's a big one.
Yep.
Because it's really easy, as you guys know, to mess up a bracket.
Yeah. We would actually sit there on those Office Max giant notepads that sit on two
The
legs.
easel?
Yeah,
Yep.
easel. Yeah. And we'd change the bracket because we'd mess it up. You're sitting there and it goes 2-2, and then you have a third one laying here. You're like, what's this guy doing? Like, who
Yeah.
does he fight? Oh, we fucked it up over here. All right, do it again. All right, let's.
Yeah, there's no eraser, huh?
There's no eraser.
Nope.
No, let's do it, because then once you had it printed, then everyone's name goes on it, and then you're good. But yeah. But they
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
it was
Yeah, they don't know the
It was a
struggle.
straight up nightmare. If you made a mistake or anything, there was just nothing fun
Yep.
about it, honestly. And that's when that was back in the day when there were fights over the brackets, because people would call you out on that shit, because sometimes, tournaments went on with mistakes, and they would still advance the tournament. And so now you get to a certain point in the tournament and then find out there's a mistake, and now there's drama because this person maybe went home or this person fought somebody else or whatever. And
Yep. Oh, I fought him already. Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, you did.
yeah.
Yeah, you did. Sorry.
Somebody that got
Sorry.
eliminated and didn't get marked and then getting fought again. So
Yeah.
it's great that they took it digital, because it really, in my opinion, advanced the scene, because it was pretty bad.
Yeah, because there was only a certain few that knew how to read brackets and write
Right.
brackets and do brackets. So now everyone has that ability to just look it up and research it and get knowledge on it. Where before, is so and so here? Oh, great. Well, who's gonna run the bracket?
It was really critical that you had somebody that knew how to run a bracket. You couldn't just get any person to follow, the computer and press enter and enter a name.
Yeah.
Somebody really had to know how to write out the bracket and where it went. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a bit more challenging.
Yeah, and I like,
But-
I've actually taught someone recently how to run a tournament for the Street Fighter scene, and it was as simple as like open up challenge and then take their names down and then click through it basically. And he
Yeah.
didn't have to know any kind of bracket theory or like how double elimination works about floating people and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
Buys.
Or
and buys,
seeds,
yeah,
Yeah.
buys,
and
seeds, all of that.
yeah, how to seed someone, seed by region versus seed by skill, all that crap, right? And yeah, it's just gotten so much easier. But the downside to that is like, I don't get a paper bracket to take home and be like, hey, I
Yeah.
won, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. But
Yeah, because that was always cool to see, like, oh, this dude messed me up, or oh, I remember this guy. And then you try and look or remember that guy's name. So when you see him in another tournament, you're like, oh, all right, I remember this guy. Like,
and Benny, like you were at around sorry, like when you started playing competitively, you were and first running tournaments too. Like, were you running on electronic tournament software, or were you running on paper like these guys were?
If I remember right, I think I was running on. I think we were, because I didn't use the was it TO, like TIO was the name of the software. That it was just like a locally run thing. Like, it wasn't online obviously, but I think it was that and then just a mixture of paper too. 'Cause
Okay.
it's just like, yeah, I don't remember exactly. It's been so long.
And I want to say like up until like I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago, like they were still running paper brackets at majors because you couldn't get internet in a convention center
oh
reliably,
my God,
right?
internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Evo still does it. Yeah, Evo still has the printouts, and then they have them run that to like the command center.
Yeah.
Just as so they can advance. Because otherwise, it's just like, yeah, if you have no signal in there, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I've done a bit of jumping around here, but to dial it back to 2004, 2005, and the origins of Devastation, so it was Rob and Darren, and then Yoshi and Corey ended up joining the crew and running the brackets and getting the continuing calling back and basically forming this team over the years. So I'm curious that like by the time Street Fighter 4 comes out, you've probably run several events, and how big is the team? Has it changed at all? Do you have some new names that like we could chronicle here?
Oh yeah, of
Well, I
course.
also want to toss a few other names in there too, because there's also
Yeah.
Brian Pacheco, who
Oh,
was
okay.
there. Cham. In the very beginning, he was critical to all of that. And there was also Charles Driscoll, I believe.
Mhm.
Chuck, good old Chuck, was also one of the guys who helped Rob with a lot of the stuff. So I want to make sure nobody gets left out.
Absolutely.
Because those are all
Yeah.
critical people as
Yeah, they
well.
were all there from day one. We were all
Yeah.
just for that, just hanging out, and then it just slowly, more and more people started joining an actual team.
And I think 2006 or 2007 is when we brought Brian on, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, around that time, around
I
that
th-
time frame.
Brian,
I think so.
Dr. Dog?
Yep,
Correct.
Dr. Dog. Yep.
Yeah. He ended up becoming also a very critical part of Devastation as well, helping out in many ways. Um, doing the tournaments. He did a lot of the tournament seeding, a lot of the brackets. He ended up
Mhm.
being the man behind the scenes, running a lot of that stuff.
Yep.
Especially as we grew and got really, really big and, started getting a lot of entries and, having 1,000 people pre-enter or whatever the ridiculous numbers were. Cause I got pretty big in the beginning where we had a lot of pre-enter people.
Mhm.
Okay.
But and I think those years, like 2007 through 9 or 8, were at the banquet halls. I think those
Okay.
are the 2 banquet hall years before we moved to Convention Center in 2009.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a
And then
ton of sense.
2009 to 2011, those 3 years we were at the Phoenix Convention Center.
Right, and we'll go into those ones later on in the show here because those are a big topic on themselves. Any other names on the Devastation team that you want to shout out, or anybody that we might have missed?
Just a lot. Just there were so many helpers around that they were there for 1 year, or then they moved away, or stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to remember every single name because
Sure.
every year it was mostly the crew, the names that we mentioned, and then some random helps from
Yeah.
because everything was voluntary. Like throughout, when we were hanging out at Cyberstation or at Desert Sky, like, hey, we're setting up Devastation. Anyone want to come some volunteers to help? And we would get helpers like that. So there was definitely a community events where people came in and helped, but we can't remember every name of that.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
But the names that I mentioned are pretty much the core people, the
Yep.
people that were there every year. The people that were behind the scenes. I know that, Darren pretty much did all the logistics all the way through every year. So, I mean, Darren was a staple. Obviously, Rob was a staple. Myself and Yoshi were at each Devastation. Brian, like I said, was at
Brian.
most. And then Charles and the other Brian.
Oh, Chris.
Oh, Chris. Yes.
Yes.
Chris
Yeah.
Celia?
Chris. Cannot think of his last name. But Chris came in around the same time as Dr. Dog did.
Yep, Brian.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember
Do you remember
his
his
name.
gamer tag?
Chris Hegum.
Okay.
Hey, Gummy. Yes.
Yes, Chris Hegum.
Very cool.
Yeah, he also did a lot of help too.
Yep.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. He also came out a bit later.
Okay.
I want to say 2009. I think he came on.
Yeah, it was the same years around Dr. Dog days. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
So I guess this is the first time I've gotten to talk to a set of TOs that ran multiple tournaments throughout the Dark Ages, basically. And I was curious about, in the Arizona scene in particular, like which games got the most entrants, or which was the most popular game at that time before Street Fighter 4?
For me, I definitely feel like it was Marvel 2.
Marvel.
ABC 2.
All the marbles.
Yeah,
Street
Marvel.
Fighter. X-Men versus Street Fighter. Marvel versus Street Fighter.
Third Strike and MVC 2 though were the two really big ones before Tekken Tag. Tekken Tag was big, and then once Tekken Tag kind of died down, Marvel came up, and man, Marvel was just a beast.
Yeah, and it also depended on where you gamed as well, because if the area you gamed didn't have a certain game, you didn't really know that game.
Sure.
Back then, it was hard for us to travel across the city or travel across the state. So we might have had Marvel in an arcade, and then another arcade might have had CBS too, and so they never really crossed paths. So you would go to a tournament in a location because that's the game they had.
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually been to Desert Sky, but I know just from talking with people throughout the years here that Desert Sky is the Marvel scene home, right?
Yes.
In Arizona.
Yes. That's right.
Very cool.
But yeah, so one question I had, like with the Marvel scene, like did you guys have like a lot of like casuals, kind of like just random like mall goers? Because like to me, like when I think of Marvel, right, that's the more like mainstream thing, right? Like that's the thing that people know from comic books or random movies and stuff. Whereas like Street Fighter, Tekken and stuff like that, you got to be like, a video gamer or a fighting game player. So like, did you guys see like a lot of like stragglers in terms of that, like people just like that just played?
Yeah, we did because of that. Especially for me at Desert Sky, it was just that game always had people around it. Whether whoever was playing, if so and so was playing so and so, you had 3 or 4 people watching or waiting with their quarter up, and then that just got the new kids like, hey, what is that over there? And like we said, like at Desert Sky, we had Marvel and CVS too. So whichever one had a crowd, it just kind of depended on the game you like. Like you like the flashiness and the high speed over here, or do you like the technicality and the footsies, that kind of stuff over here. And then we were really welcoming. So if we saw a kid interested in it, you wouldn't beat his ass and get him off the game. You would teach him. You would show him how to throw a fireball. You'd say, "Don't jump because you can't block in the air." That kind of stuff. And then that's how we got a lot of people to come in. That's how I met a lot of my friends from the Marvel and from the CBS, just from hanging out playing video games at an arcade, and they just kept coming back because it's that FGC.
Nice.
Yeah, and I would agree. I was actually the manager of Cyberstation for several years, so I was in an arcade all day long. Even when there weren't crowds there. And it really also boils down to, like he said, who's playing what. People are curious. If there's 4 or 5 people playing Marvel, then people are going to go over there and stand by the Marvel game. If there's 4 or 5 people playing CVS, people are going to go over there and see what's going on at the CVS game.
Oh, okay.
The crowds definitely drew people. People would stand all around, and kind of the more people you had there, people start throwing up their quarters. They want to they'd want a part of that. And that was the beautiful thing about an arcade scene that, as much as I love online, you can't replicate, is just that organicness of, what's going on over here, the curiosity and, the interest. I'll never forget some of the first times I saw somebody playing the original Street Fighter 2 at a skating rink. I was just mesmerized, and there's a bunch of people around it. I just wanted to play. And, the first time I played and got my ass kicked, I was so hooked, I got destroyed. But, I kept putting my quarter up there, and I just kept coming back for more and coming back for more, and it just hasn't stopped. And so it's just something about the wonder of who you're going to play, and, who can come up and play, because you never know in arcades. You put your quarter up and, you think you're king shit until all of a sudden some guy you've never seen before just shows up and destroys you, shows you things you didn't even know were possible in that game.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about the arcades.
I guess, yeah, I I think the closest we can get to nowadays is like local gatherings at like a gaming shop or a PC, gaming lounge or something. But like I've heard plenty from the OGs about how that's not the same because you're not putting a quarter up, you're not putting money up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like every match is a money match.
Yeah.
Even though it's 25 cents, that quarter does something to you mentally. It does.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a little kid and you've only got
Yep.
$5 or a
Yep.
dollar
This
or
is
whatever
exactly.
it is. Like you
I was
got
gonna
four.
say, yep.
Yep.
So they're precious. So that 25 cents might as well have been $25.
Exactly.
So every match is like a money match. They're all intense and like there's just no give me's or nothing.
Yep. Yeah, especially back then. Like mom said, I'm gonna be here for 2 hours. Nope, I am not losing all my money
Yeah.
in 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, you can even see like the parallel, like in terms of like how games were back in the day. It's like you had limited continues. Like, what was the game that my son was playing? Skylanders. It's the one where you like get the little figures on the
Yeah.
portal. But that has like unlimited lives as long as you had characters. So as long as you had characters, you can keep playing till you beat it. Whereas you go play like original Contra or something, some game like that. It's just like, okay, you got 3 lives, and it's like then you're dead. It's just
Yep.
like, okay, now you got to start over from the beginning.
Yep.
So it's just like, that's a whole different mindset when you're like playing
It
arcade
is.
games, because it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, I have this one quarter, and this is what I have. I have to run, play this as long as I possibly can.
Yep.
I just thought of this like fantasy version of arcade Skylanders where you have to take one of those figures and put it on the machine, and if you lose the figure.
Oh,
That'd be rough, man.
That would be rough.
So, I had one other question about arcades in relation to the tournaments that y'all ran. Was there a lot of like bleed over between the arcade players? Then you like were you able to actually like recruit people to come to your tournaments through the arcades? Like,
Yeah.
Were you able to like identify like people who really wanted to take it to the next level? And how did you like get them into the Devastation tournaments? How did you promote it basically?
Word of mouth. At very start, word of mouth. Later on in the years, we got flyers and stuff like that. But at first, it was word of mouth. Like we would post up at the arcades and be like, "Hey, this weekend we're gonna have a giant tournament. We're calling it Devastation. Here's the address." It was a lot of just word of mouth at first, for sure, for sure.
Okay.
And forums too. SRK was paramount.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day, SRK was very prominent. Everybody checked the forums, so
Yep.
we post a lot in there, recruit a lot of people from the forums. And to answer your question about who you knew was serious, to me, it was always the people who found us on SRK.
Oh
That's how
yeah.
you knew somebody was serious about a fighting game, is if they found the SRK threads. The people would go in the arcade and show up and say they wanted to play, but the people that really wanted to play, they would always find their way to the Arizona SRK thread and just like, hey, how's it going? I was just at the arcade and I played this dude. And that was kind of the start of where you coordinated where you would meet up, or the talks, or hey, we're going to be playing at Arnold's house this weekend or something like that, because a lot of the stuff was underground. So a lot of the real come ups, especially after 2009 when Street Fighter 4 came up, was all at people's houses.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of underground little, hey, we're going to be playing at this person's house on Friday, or Yoshi's house on Saturday, or Haz's house. There was just always a place where people are going to do events.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you pretty much had to either know somebody or be connected to the scene somehow to like find out where those were.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Yoshi, you mentioned flyers, and that's something that I've actually been entertaining recently for modern day fighting games. Like, go to GameStop and drop some flyers off or something. Like, where did you guys pass the flyers out, or where'd you post them at?
At the arcades.
arcades?
Almost all of our dealings happen at the arcades, at the mall. We would walk around the mall handing out stuff because back then we were underage. Back then it was nothing but kids. We don't have a lot of access to anything, so we were always at the arcade at the mall. So let's just walk around and people flyers and stuff like that. We'd put them on the windows of the cars.
Oh,
Like
the
any-
cars.
any-
Okay.
Yeah, any car that was parked close to the arcade entrance had a flyer on it.
Man, I was
think
hoping to
at
get
one
ideas from
point-
you guys too. Like, I was like, okay, but arcades are gone and malls are gone, so I can't even
Yeah.
pass flyers out there.
Yeah, no, just hit up a big somewhere where there's a lot of traffic and just post them up on the windows.
GameStop did let us though. I think one point in time, Rob did get GameStop to
Yep.
agree to allow us to leave flyers, and we were
Yep.
giving
Flyers.
GameStop flyers.
And that's another thing that you can utilize too is GameStop is store to store kind of thing. So if you just get in with
Yep.
the manager and be like, hey, I'm having this event on Saturday, can I drop these off?
Yeah.
And then it depends on the manager if they say yes or no.
And
No,
there are
okay,
comic
thanks.
book shops too.
Yep, comic book shops. Yeah,
You
later
know,
on.
we used
Later
to
on.
host tournaments there, and drop all kinds of stuff at comic book shops.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. You go to where your people are, where you know your demographic, you know who you're shooting.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Yep.
sense. Well, to move on to the next topic here. So we're at 2004, 2005 is the origins, and then you guys started running tournaments consistently, like Devastation consistently yearly, going from houses to ballroom to convention center. But in the middle of all that, there was also, and from my experience, after Street Fighter 4 came out, there were several like satellite and promotional events that like smaller one-off tournaments that you guys held. And I kind of wanted to just wax nostalgic and revisit some of your guys' favorite ones or my favorite ones or whatever. So,
Well, I'm pretty sure that we all have one that stands out as a favorite for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
let's get into that one. What's your favorite one, Corey?
Well, definitely probably the one at Centerfolds, the first
Has
one
to
we
be.
had.
Has to be. It
That
has
was
to be.
insane.
I mean, who hosts an video game tournament at a strip club?
Closed.
Who does
At
that?
a closed strip club.
Who does that? But we got that going. And
Wait, you said it was a
Prob-
closed strip club?
Yeah, so
Like-
on Sundays, so the way it was, I guess, set up is one half of it is topless and the other half is fully nude. But on Sundays, it's not. So one half of it is closed on Sundays. So it was set up that the tournament was supposed to be in the closed half on a Sunday with no women, no nothing. That
Mhm.
wasn't supposed to be part of the deal. It was just
Oh.
a space that we were using
Yep.
because it was closed.
Okay.
Ah.
And then
Yeah. And
But
then all that happened.
That's why this gets interesting because you saw the results, but that was not the intended, the way it was supposed to go at all.
No, at all.
So
It was
to
just
be
supposed to be a
clear,
fighting game tournament.
to be clear, the results were like, as somebody who actually went to that tournament, like I went into the club and then I sat down and like the stage where like there's a pole and then everyone throws their dollar bills and stuff. Like that's this. I think the
I don't know anything
TVs were
about
on
that.
the stage.
That's right. The TVs were on the main
On the
stage.
So like we were all just like the people that would ordinarily be just like throwing money at it, we were just had our joysticks in our hands instead.
Yeah. And so there was not supposed to be women on that stage. The
No,
stage
no.
was supposed to be an empty stage,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and then you guys were supposed to just have the tournament around it. And again, we were just utilizing the space.
Yep.
But apparently the women that were there just like
Didn't care.
couldn't resist that there were a bunch of guys in there playing video games,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Well, let's see if we can get these guys to like not play video games."
We were just
So,
oozing
like,
testosterone, truly.
These girls were like on a mission to like get you guys to not play
Mhm.
the tournament and to look at them, and these guys weren't having it.
No.
These guys were like playing the video game still,
Everyone
and
was
the women were
hyper
getting
focused.
frustrated
Yeah.
because these guys were like not looking at them and playing the games. So next thing you know, the girls are like in the guys' laps while they're playing games.
Yep.
So next thing you know, they're coming off the stage and they're like trying to give free lap dances to these guys. And these guys are still looking around the girls like this. They're like, they got the controller. They're like trying to see past the girl and still play this game. And these girls are just dancing on them. And these guys are like,
Get off me! I'm trying to win this tournament.
get off me. I'm trying to play a tournament.
Yeah. And it had a good price pad too. I think it was in
Yeah.
a couple $100. So people wanted to win the tournament.
It was just hilarious that like these girls and these guys, they were just determined and the guys weren't having it.
Yeah, and,
And they were getting pissed.
yeah,
They were
and what
getting
made the
pissed that
event
guys
great
were-
too was it was one of the events that we had 98 KUPD shot us out and had 98 KUPD show up too. So
Oh.
it was great to hear the next day the disc jockeys making fun of that because they were like I woke up early to listen to the radio and they were like, yeah, they had the players playing games and they were lap dancing and the players didn't care. They did not care. They just wanted to get their game on. So
Yep.
it was great to hear that feedback from the radio station.
It's one of those things like for somebody that doesn't game, right? Like when you're in the zone and like you're playing, you're doing well or something, or it's something serious. Like you don't want anybody to bother you, your
No,
wife,
you
your
don't want
kids, whatever. Like
nothing.
get out of here, like leave me alone. So like
Yep.
that's just thinking about that and the fact that that whole scene. But I had a question for John, like as as an outsider, as somebody that was like that learned about this event and where it was going to be held, like what were your initial thoughts going into that place?
Great
So
question.
That is because we know what we were thinking because we were hosting it. We knew how it was supposed to happen, but you're right. I've never gotten that point of
Yeah,
view.
no, me neither.
yeah, I mean, I grew up pretty sheltered, and so like that wasn't my first time in a strip club, but it was definitely the first time in a strip club with a joystick. Uh, and I clearly was like, it was cool to go. Like I was like, this is so novel that I gotta attend. And
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I believe at that time this was I entered a Marvel 3 tournament, so this is probably around 2011 or so, or 2010 ish maybe. And then I remember two big outcomes from that. So going into it, I was like, I came in with an open mind, but I did know that like there was a little bit of like, I don't know how this is gonna turn out. Like this might be another shady TO thing. Like, you know, they might try to sell me Reiki crystals again or something. Not Devastation ever. Devastation never did that, but a different TO did. So like I had some hesitation, but it was also by a team that I had previously attended several tournaments for. And so like at that point, it's like it was part of just like supporting the community and trying new things. Like I think one time we had a tournament at a pizza parlor and we were like, that's novel. And then we were doing bar fights and stuff too. And like, so this was just another thing. But the other outcome that I remember here is that a player who is a good friend of mine, who shall not be named because he's happily married with kids, he got one of the girls' numbers. He walked out of it with a number, yeah. And
Nice.
I don't know what happened there, but I ended up winning the tournament too. That was the other outcome. So it feels like I remember like sitting at Cane's with the guy afterwards, being like, I think we both won, and, and I think I think everybody else was distracted, and that's probably why I won.
Yeah, it was a good day for you guys for sure.
Yeah, I could definitely see why people have been distracted that day.
Yep.
Very cool, very cool. So that
Yeah,
was
no,
one
that
of.
was
Oh, go ahead.
a legendary memory for sure. That
Yeah.
the whole thing was great.
So what other kinds of like one-off tournaments did you guys run over the years, or any standouts?
I really like the Microsoft Store run that we had. Like we were there probably every month or so, or bi-monthly. Like Rob had a really good connection with someone at the store,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was letting us show up to the Microsoft Store at Fashion Square, and we'd use
Okay,
all
so
of their setups, and they'd provide the monitors and all that. We would bring the systems in and the hookups, the headsets, and we'd promote it, word of mouth kind of thing, because it was a Microsoft store and it was after hours when the mall was closed, so we couldn't have a lot of people there. But it was a fun little event. We brought out quite a bit of people for something so off like that at a tournament after hours at a mall
Yeah. So
at a Microsoft
the
store.
Microsoft store specifically was in Fashion Square, right? Or at least
Correct.
one of them was, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
the other
yeah,
thing
so
is,
Scottsdale.
Yep.
yeah. So and then there were if my memory serves correctly, there were several Microsoft store tournaments because Rob had it in. So like I remember them being launch tournaments specifically. Like there was one
Yes.
for Marvel 3 or sorry, Ultimate Marvel 3, there was one for Street Fighter 4 AE, and there was one for Cross Tekken, I think.
I want to say Cross Tekken too. Yeah,
I
because
think we did Gears of War also, some
Gears
Call
of
of
War.
Duties.
oh yeah, we did a Call of Wars and a Gears of War too. That was non-fighting game, but
And
yeah.
speaking of which, shout out to George Bradbury. He's the guy who did that. Real good guy. He's still with Microsoft, I believe. But
Oh,
he was the
wow.
connection that Rob had. He took really good care of us, made sure that we had Microsoft points to get all the characters because man, you had to buy all that stuff.
Yeah, you had to
But
get
they would give us like the points. So the Microsoft store really came through. They actually bought all the characters, bought all the stuff for us. One of the few places that didn't make Rob pay for it out of pocket. And they were good to us too.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft stores, I agree, one of my favorites for sure that we did things for.
One question I had about that, like in terms of like, because you said it was after hours. Like, was there any kind of incentive for that, or was that probably just more of like a networking kind of relationship thing that Rob had with George?
Probably a little bit of both. I know, definitely networking and stuff because he knew George, but I'm pretty sure later on there was some reciprocation there where maybe Rob got a little bit off of it because it was an event and we were bringing a lot of things in and we had staff and all of that, but it was never really anything about that. It was more just about building Devastation up and the
Mhm.
community up.
Yeah, it was a means to promote Devastation. They
for
allowed
sure.
us to hand out Devastation cards and talk to
Mhm.
people about Devastation. So, while we're doing the Microsoft Store stuff, we're always also promoting Devastation.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of the main focal points. So it's kind of like, dual edge.
Yep.
Speaking of double edged stuff here, I really want to contrast the two events we've talked about here, where we're talking about centerfolds and a strip club, as well as a Microsoft store in Fashion Square. Those couldn't be fundamentally different.
Right.
and what's great is though that like we're in the conversation of venues right now about like again, centerfolds had its own attractiveness to it. And novelty to it, but then the Microsoft store also represented a way of like being family friendly, and it's in Scottsdale Fashion Square, which has its. I have my own like. I remember seeing a bunch of fighting game community people that I'd known for years at that point, and we did not fit into Fashion Square. We did not fit into the demographics of Fashion Square. But the other thing, though, is at that time I had also started working in corporate America, and I had a bunch of coworkers that were just interested in what I was doing competitively, and like a venue like a gaming store or a venue like a college, like we've talked about in previous episodes, those can be a little bit more committal versus like, hey, there's a Microsoft store. I like the Microsoft store. I'm gonna go cheer John on. Like it was a different way of welcoming people, It
was.
And so I also want to be a little selfish here because I know that Street Fighter Cross Tekken came out and I won that tournament. And I want a big, I want an arcade stick. I want it was a Mad Catz arcade stick for like sponsored by MLG or something. So it was like red and blue and stuff. It was a good ass prize. And then I think I placed high in the AE tournament as well. Like I think maybe I got third or something. And then I got a badass controller. Like it was an evil genius or not evil, evil controllers if I recall
controller.
correctly.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember what happened with the Marvel tournament. I think Armando won that one. I don't think I did very well, but it was still really fun.
Armando or forward back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, yeah. Oh man. Okay. And then so any other final thoughts on the Microsoft store? Any other things good memories there?
Good memories,
Good times. I'm still in communication with George,
Oh wow, nice.
Nice.
Yeah. Just through Facebook. I'm going to act like I text him all the time, but
You guys are getting lunch next week.
Yeah, right.
That's the communication.
Cool. And then the other another big like satellite event that I recall is Bookman's, or like the relationship with Bookman's, and I believe Devastation held multiple tournaments at Bookman's as well, right?
Yep, we did. That was also another just we knew the people at Bookman's and they always wanted they're really big on the community and everything. So us being a small little company or whatever you want to call us back then that wanted to represent something locally, they were all about it. They were all about it.
And not to mention another important aspect is really we're looking for some place that has space and will have us. Not everybody wants to throw tournaments or allow you to have tournaments or anything like that. So, back then it was also about finding places that would have us. Because we've actually done some at some pretty interesting places. So another one of my favorites that we did was like I think you said the Pizza Parlor, but we also did like Best Buy tournaments.
Oh yeah.
Those were interesting at the Best Buy, where they would like shut the Best Buy down.
Yeah.
And we would stay
Launch
after
parties.
hours, the
Nice.
launch parties and stuff, and do them at Best Buy.
Yep. I completely forgot we did some Best Buy. We did so many events. Yeah.
Launch party tournaments are such a completely different energy than a normal tournament, because a lot of times you're like with the Ranbats or whatnot, you're like you're there strictly business, you're trying to win, you're trying to be competitive and whatnot. But the launch tournament, it's a party. Everyone's like, hey, this new game's coming out, let's fucking celebrate, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did. We had cupcakes and cake.
Yeah,
and
one of them was a couple of them are really good. I don't know if it was Street Fighter 4 or Super, but we did that one that was really fun at one of the Best Buys where I think was it Monster or one of the nitrous drinks came? Remember they're giving us all the energy drinks?
Yeah, they were
They
giving us
donated a
energy
ton,
drinks.
so like everybody there's just hopped up on all these energy drinks.
Yeah, playing the game, like
Street
hours
Fighter,
old. Yeah.
The game was coming out at midnight, so they wouldn't sell it to us yet, but we had it to play.
Yeah.
So all of us were just playing the game, waiting for midnight to come out so we can get our copies.
Yep.
Just drinking energy drinks, all hopped up.
Yeah, that was going to be my question: is if you guys did like midnight launches, because that's one of my favorite memories. Was like when Super Street Fighter 4 came out. We were hosting tournaments because I'm from Anchorage, Alaska, and we were doing tournaments at Play and Trade. And that's where we would do it. And I remember like somebody had like early access to Super, so like I had gone to their house like a couple days before and had played. I was playing Honda. and that's when he had the Ultra 2, the zero command grab, and that was like one of my favorite tournament or it wasn't even a tournament. It was just waiting for midnight launch. I had like a 26 game win streak. Nobody could beat me that night, and I was just like waiting. I was just sitting down at the chair, looking at the TV at the top of the plane train, and just like running through everybody. I was like, "Who's next?" I was like, "Let's go."
Nice.
Those are the feelings, man. That's what we
Yeah.
play fighting games for. Those
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah.
One of the reasons.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of moments, I do want to move us forward in time here and talk about. Well, actually, I guess backwards in this case. I want to talk about 2010. 2010 is when the Devastation 2010 was held, and that was the first one in the convention center, right? And
No, it
so
was 2009.
I think they
Oh,
said
sorry,
09
2009 was.
9.
Yeah.
That was the one
Okay.
you partnered with that Big Boys and Their Toys.
Yes.
Oh,
That's how that came around.
Mm-hmm.
okay. Was that so? The first Devastation that I ever got to see was a streamed one. It was back on Justin TV. Was that 2010 or 2009?
That was 09.
Oh, was it the
What's
DJ Wheat and Slasher?
The DJ, yeah, the DJ Wheat one.
That was 2009. I think that was
Yep,
our first one.
that was that Big Boys and Their Toys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Big
Okay.
Boys and Their Toys in 2009 was the very first one that we streamed. And, really it was, from my understanding, Rob's idea. I hadn't even heard of that stuff yet. And he wanted to try something new. And he had hired this crew. And like I said, I think it was DJ Weed and Slasher was the guy who was going to do the commentating. And these weren't even Street Fighter people.
Mhm.
They were just people that were doing, I guess, podcasts and streams.
Mhm.
Yep.
And so this is before you even got like a pro to do the commentating.
Yeah,
And,
because I jumped on there. I think you jumped on there. Like
Mhm.
towards the end, we had to find people to cover the mic because a lot of the
Mhm.
people didn't know the game, didn't know. So we just had to jump on and comment and just talk
Yeah.
about what was going on.
And that was the
Yeah.
first and only year the Cannon twins went to Devastation.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think I got my years mixed up too. Because like now that you said 09, like I remember watching that, when I was in Alaska, and the thing that I remember was Mike Watson being there. That Mike Watson Gutex beef or whatever it was, or I think
Oh,
it's something like,
yeah.
you just don't know, or something like
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah. You
they
just
were
don't know. They made T-shirts out of that.
Yeah. So that was at that event. Oh man, that's 09. Holy crap.
Yeah, that was 09. Yeah, and that event was also awesome because Big Boys and the Toys had a stripper and a
The
bar
stripper room.
behind
Yeah.
us.
A
So
stripper room.
yeah, so
Had nothing to do with us.
but I mean, we could go there if we wanted to.
Yeah.
In between sets, have a beer.
So I kind of glossed over this, but what exactly is Big Boys and Their Toys, and what was that partnership like?
It was just an event. It was called Big Boys and Their Toys, and it was at the venue, and they showcased like boats and cars and stuff like that, like
Oh,
Big
okay, that
Boys
kinda.
and their toys. But I think the way that came around, I could be wrong, but the way I understand it is they had some extra space that vendors didn't fill, and then that's when Rob was able to get in
Mhm.
there. So that's why we were able to piggyback on that, which was
Mhm.
great because that gave us promotion because that put us on their bill, that put us on their flyers.
Super
So
strong.
that really
Ah.
exposed us.
Okay.
So
And
that's
then
why that
Oh.
grew that as big as that was for that 1 year because there was a lot of people there. We were not expecting that much.
yeah, I mean,
No, but that was,
like speaking of exposing, like we talked a little bit about the stream, but I do want to like underscore that like that Devastation was the first streamed major tournament in the FGC that I know of, and I think pretty much anyone else knows of. Like it was the first one, like not
Yep.
just in Arizona, like in the entire world. I think.
Yeah, we
like
could say that. Yeah,
think
that
so.
it was unheard of. It was just something new.
And again, the Cannon twins were there, and they were very interested in what we had going on with the stream
Yeah.
setup, because it was before. So in that year, we had Devastation in the beginning of the year, like February. So Evo wasn't until like July, August. So it was 6 to 7 months before Evo, and that was also the first year that Evo had a stream.
Ah, okay.
So I'm not trying to say they copied our tech, but maybe they copied our tech. A lot of tech.
And for the Zoomers that are listening right now, like when we say streams too, like Twitch.tv wasn't even a thing at that point. Like
No.
it was a parent company or a predecessor company called Justin.tv.
There was no
Yeah.
streaming. The only thing you could find was YouTube. That's it.
Yeah.
There was no set streaming at all. There was nothing.
Yeah, that was back in the days of like I kept on hearing about like the Evo DVDs and stuff like
Yep,
that people
yep.
would,
Yeah.
like, people would sell.
Yes.
Like
Yep.
And then I
Those are
remember.
great.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to say those are great. Yeah, you always waited for the DVDs because there was nothing else.
Yeah.
So after Evo, you'd get like the highlight DVDs and stuff, and everybody would buy them.
Yeah, so then like the stream ultimately ended up being a kind of a replacement for that, because it was the footage, it was the raw footage of the matches and whatnot that are actually being played on the video feed of our podcast right now. And I guess I do also want to underscore that we talked about DJ Wheat and Slasher and whatnot. And I remember the culture at the time where esports, the concept of esports was still laughable, for lack of a better phrase. Like, we thought it was corny as shit. Like, oh, this isn't a real sport. Why are we calling it esports? That's dumb. And there's still some of that in the community today, but like we know how drastically different it is.
Oh yeah,
right.
It's a much different landscape now. Yeah,
it's a completely different landscape. Yes, because back then you would say esports and they laugh at you, or what is that?
Yeah.
Now you say esports and you've heard it somewhere. You know of it. Someone has talked about it. Like, it's out. Like, you know it exists. Or before, like, what the hell is that? You're making up something.
Especially like in terms of like the money that some of these people are making. It's just like that's really what catches a lot of the parents' eyes, because they're just like, oh, you're just over there playing games, and it's just like, well, mom, I just won 20K. Oh, what? You want
What?
20K?
You want
Like,
20K?
oh, doing
Yeah,
this? Like, what?
yeah,
Let me
yeah, what-
cultivate this. Let me upgrade your stuff.
what
Get all this.
20K? What did you do? I just played a game.
Yeah.
That game you're yelling at me all the time.
This is like the equivalent of the parent trying to get their kid an athletic scholarship and just putting them
Right.
through. I'm just gonna buy you a bunch of Sony consoles, and
Yeah,
you're gonna
do it.
pay for college with that. Oh man. Any other noteworthy moments for 2000 for the first Devastation at the ballroom, or the convention center rather, and the first streams Devastation?
That for me, I'll say that was the year that we also had Passes and Coasters bring the arcade games. So that was the year that we had a ton of arcade games. We had a bunch of them. So on top of like all the the tournament, we also had a bunch of side tournaments like Killer Instinct, all the fighting game little tournaments and stuff, kind of over in the area. So I know I personally like that because I love Killer Instinct, but it was really neat to see all the arcade games. And at the time, we had a really good relationship with Castles and Coasters. They took their fighting games and put them all downstairs. They moved like Marvel 2 into like a big screen cabinet, and CVS 2 and Third Strike.
Wow.
And then they donated a bunch of games. Yeah, the arcade manager, so Saber Scott, was able to make friends with the arcade manager there, and get us some really good ties with Castles and Coasters, and they brought us arcade games and everything for free, all play on, and just made a bunch of changes so the fighting game players could have a place to play.
Wow.
I always thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. Speaking of Saber and OGs in general, like as somebody who joined the scene in 2009 or late 2009, early 2010, I hadn't actually been playing. I had been playing like competitively online, right, and learning the game and whatnot, but I wasn't interested in playing offline until like several factors occurred. Like a buddy of mine was trying to in the local scene, Reese was trying to get me to come out to play, but then I remember pulling up the Devastation stream and being like, oh, there's somebody named Rick Dog on the stream, and he's from Arizona and he's playing against Gutex. And I'm like, I know Gutex because that he's like the celebrity in the scene at that time, right? And he had a podcast and he was trying to put his name out there and traveling, obviously. And I was like, oh, but he's playing against Rick, and Rick is somebody that lives here, and I live here. Maybe I can do this too. And like, like I do think that stream was like, and that event, despite not me attending it, was like instrumental in like why I'm here and probably why this podcast is even happening.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, and then to bring a point to that too is Devastation is what I believe no one knew Arizona gained until the Devastation, because we always ran tournaments in house. We always ran tournaments in our arcades and stuff like that, because back then you didn't travel that well. It wasn't that easy. We were all kids, so everyone just knew their own thing. So when all of a sudden we have this giant tournament and we have people from other states showing up, and they're going back and they're like, I just got my ass handed to me by Arizona kid. What? They're playing games in Arizona? Like, yeah, it's a state with kids in it. Yeah. Yeah, they're playing games in Arizona. So that really, for me, that's when I noticed a shift in people acknowledging that we knew how to play games in Arizona because of Devastation. Because it was always New York. It was always California. It was
Yep.
always Texas. The big
Yep.
people, the people that had the big names. You had multiple arcades. You didn't know anything about the little arcades in Phoenix, in Tucson. Shout out to
Exactly.
Tucson. Those motherfuckers
Yeah.
can play. Like it
Yeah,
was
they
just
can.
it's just one of those things. Like you just didn't know until all of a sudden Tucson shows up, Mesa shows up, Golfland Sunsplash, all those everything shows up, and then Californians or people from another state think they got this locked, and then they're placing not even 10th. It was to me that's
Right.
when I noticed like we can game, people just weren't acknowledging it. And then as we grew as a state and Devastation, then people recognized us a lot more.
Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say as an outsider, like I said, from being in Alaska, like that was watching Devastation, and like I had friends that lived here and were telling me like if I was gonna move somewhere, you should come visit in Arizona because I visited in like 2000, late 2010. But hearing about Devastation, because like you said, it was to me like just starting on the FGC. It was like I knew about New York, I knew about like SoCal, NorCal, and like Texas, and that was it. And then it was like, oh, we're hosting this tournament in AZ. And then, like John said, you see Gutex, you see Mike Watson. I see all these people that I had been reading about or hearing the lore about, and I'm just like, oh, they're going to this place, and like this is a potential place that I'm going to move. Like this is something that I was looking forward to also.
Nice.
Yeah, shout out to Tucson, by the way, because like
Yeah.
Yoshi said, Tucson shreds.
Mhm.
They might be small, but they're mighty.
Oh yeah.
I will tell you, actually, nowadays they're bigger than Phoenix for the Street Fighter crew, at least.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah,
Really? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
they've been killing it lately. So uh, it's just some clarification on this Devastation that we're talking about here. Is it's fighting games, and obviously I think we all knew that Street Fighter 4 would be the biggest fighting game at the convention, but was there like did y'all do shooters too? Did you all do
Yep.
anything else in addition to shooters?
Mhm.
Any other genres of games?
Oh man,
All
well,
of them.
all of them, especially at the time, we didn't know what we were doing with Devastation. But we wanted it to be focused on fighting, but we also wanted other people to come because
Mhm.
FGC is just a group, and
Mhm.
we want to
Mm.
encompass everyone. So that's why we had Guitar Hero, Call of Duty. We had some random racing game. Like that's why Castle and Coasters
Gears.
provided Gears.
Gears.
That's why Castle and Coasters provided the arcades because we wanted it to be all kinds of arcades, all kinds of games. Yes, we're focusing on the fighting community, but we want to have other stuff. I mean, that's why we had all the tournaments for those games. We had Call of Duty, Gears of War tournaments, Guitar Hero tournaments. I mean, our legendary Paper Rock Scissors tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, we wanted to encompass everything because it wasn't just for fighting games. It was the whole.
His dream was Devastation was a gaming tournament, not just
Mhm.
a fighting game tournament, but a gaming tournament. We're there for the fighting games, but we bring in all the other people and blend genres, right? Maybe somebody who's there for Guitar Hero falls in love with Street Fighter.
Yeah. And I remember like the reception of the stream in particular with DJ Wheat and Slasher. The fighting game community gave them kind of a cool reception ultimately because they were viewed as outsiders. They came from the shooter community. They came from the esports community, which we thought was laughable at the time.
Mhm.
And so when you recontextualize Devastation as a fully gaming tournament, then of course you want the esports guys at the forefront as the vanguard for it, right? Because like you have a much wider umbrella versus getting a bunch of FGC personalities on the stream, which again, none of us were thinking about that at the time about what the
No.
Yeah.
broadcast value of this thing is, right?
Right.
That's okay. Huh.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, because now they're all streamers, they're all celebrities in their own rights. But back then, it was just Justin Wong hanging out, right there. But he's just chilling, like Gutex and all that. They're just hanging out at my house, "Stop, that's my beer, like that kind of stuff. Just they were just hanging out, and now at that time we were just playing games, and then it grew into this giant thing now that we know as FGC and esports, which is great because we've been in it for a while. So it's great to see that growth.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned that there was like the hope that there would be crossover from other communities into fighting games and showing them. What did you guys see instances of the opposite happening, where people from the fighting game community started getting into Guitar Hero or Gears or any of that kind of stuff?
I can speak for myself because I always thought I would never be good at the shooters or that it wouldn't appeal to me. That first person just view is
Yeah.
something I never thought I would like. And then after being in a Call of Duty tournament and being the tournament official for it and all that, and seeing the game in action, that actually made me want to play Call of Duty because I was like, oh, I could get down on this. I see how they're playing it, and then as I went through the tournament, I actually found myself getting really into it because I knew the game, especially at that high level. High level tournaments is always different than just your casual gaming. So it was showing me like, wow, you can do that. Like, wow, this game is cool. And the first time I picked up a shooter is because I went to a Devastation and I was tournamenting Call of Duty. So that crossover definitely applied for me. And if it applied for me, I'm pretty sure it applied for all kinds of other people around.
Yeah, for sure. I applied for me too. I started playing Gears of War after I saw what people were doing for Gears of War.
Nice.
Yeah, like he
Any
said,
card game
it's nice
presence? Or-
seeing.
sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's nice seeing high level play. High level play will motivate you. When you see people playing a game and you see what it's capable of versus what you do with it,
Yes.
sometimes it's motivating, for sure.
Very cool. And Benny, like back in Alaska, did you guys ever isolate to specifically fighting games, or did you kind of take the Devastation route and kind of combine a lot of gaming stuff together? Did you ever have any like co-locations with shooters or any other genres?
Well, I ended up hosting a Gears tourney one time. I don't think I did Call of Duty. For me, like I always had fun playing Call of Duty just online with friends, and I didn't like the kind of restrictions that they wanted for like MLG or whatever rules, because that's what competitively people wanted. They were wanted to restrict a bunch of stuff, and I was like, that's the stuff that I find fun, so I'm not going to do that. But like Gears, like yeah, I did do a Gears tournament one time. That was just something personally that because I was playing it at the time, I had a couple of my like FGC friends join in that as well. I only did that one time though, but I mean, other than that, I mean, the only other kind of like huge kind of like gaming kind of convention thing that we had was like it's called SenshiCon. It was like an anime convention, and then they would do fighting games and then random other stuff. They did like Mario speed runs. I won like 2 of those randomly. So yeah, it was
Nice.
just like that was the only other like major like cross game kind of event that went on there.
Nice. Okay. So if we could fast forward to a year later, and at that point, like we've gone. So the timeline is that Devastation happened, and then a lot of like the Bookman's tournaments and the Microsoft tournaments and the the Centerfolds tournament specifically happened after that, and then there like those tournaments were to promote Devastation, the last Devastation, so to say, right? And I was curious about like, could you guys give me like a rundown of like what the following year was like for y'all?
Exciting and hectic at the same time because we had grown so much and we wanted to fit so much. We just didn't know how to accomplish it at the time.
So
Going into it,
you guys were like,
It was
were you guys like the sole proprietor or the sole rental for the convention center at that point, or were you guys still partnered up with Big Boys and their toys?
no, by then it was just us. So we had
It was
this
just
whole
us.
room to fill by ourselves.
Okay.
And like he said, it was real busy. I mean, we're talking the year leading up to like Devastation 2010, lots of meetings constantly going over the awards. Like, these are the medals, these are the awards, this is the structure. I mean, it really got so big that it required a lot of planning, a lot of different meetings. It wasn't just like, hey, you met a week before Devastation to plan it. It
Yeah.
became to where throughout the entire year we're going to meetings, we're going to Rob's house, we're talking about things, you're testing things. I mean, Mortal Kombat, when we had to run a Mortal Kombat tournament, you had to literally play 20 consoles through story mode, which is like 4 hours a piece.
Yep.
You have to buy all the DLCs for 20 consoles. I mean, it's a thing, it's a whole undertaking when you're talking updating all these
Yeah.
consoles for games, because if even one is not up to date, it messes everything up.
Yep.
So it really became a lot of work, and it was all volunteer work. So just to be clear, Devastation was never a paid event for any of us. It was always volunteer work all the way until the end. And even Rob, I don't know, benefited much from Devastation, in the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah,
So it
'cause
was never about money. It was about a love for the scene and a love of the games, strictly.
Cause I think Rob was under or in the red almost every single Devastation except probably the last one, and even then it was probably breaking even because it was just a lot of volunteers, a lot of
Sure.
FGC community, everyone's helping out. We're trying to do this on our own kind of thing. I mean, of
Okay.
course, the goal was to get bigger, but I don't think none of us ever made any kind of money off of Devastation. It was all for the love.
So
Mhm.
as far as like the meetings and whatnot, and the team of volunteers that y'all had, you know, we threw out a bunch of names earlier at the beginning of the show, but like my guess is you guys scaled up to account for the bigger the bigger
Yep.
event, right? So
Yep.
like how many people do you think, like just a number, do you think were behind that the Devastation 2010?
So the core people, still not many. The rest were just a bunch of volunteers that
Yep.
were assigned like a day or two before Devastation.
Okay.
But really, the core of everything was this: the kind of people, only 5, 6 of us,
Yeah.
maybe 7, of the core of the work, and then the rest were volunteers that met up at various points throughout to like, hey, you guys going to be running this tournament, the Guitar Hero people, and stuff like that, and they were just kind of the TOs.
Yeah.
But as far as structuring and organizing and planning the entire thing, honestly, the bulk of it was Rob. Rob did a lot of that stuff, and then delegated, to myself, Yoshi, Brian, the things that he needed that he wasn't able to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So the
But
core 5 or 6 plus
honestly,
plus additional volunteers plus the core 5 or 6 here then still
Oh
for
yeah, and that's how it was every year. Just because it was such a love thing for us that it was hard to hand big things that needed to get done, important things, to somebody new. So it was always the core people. It
sure.
was always the core people that handled the big things, the bookings and the inventory and the setups and all of that. And then once there was something else where we could delegate, then that's when the volunteers came in, because it was all from the start. It started at a house with just the core people, and then we
Mhm.
still kept that mentality, still kept that form until it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and we can delegate. But it was always still the core, no matter what, because it was our baby.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, it was hard to let it go.
I was fortunate enough to be able to attend that Devastation. I saw it on TV, so I'm like, I definitely got to go this next time. And I remember, like, I think it was probably my first major. Now I think about it, and walking into that convention center for the first time and seeing just so many fucking video games. And I do want to revisit the comment that you said earlier about Corey, about downloading all the systems and unlocking all the story mode stuff, because again, 2010 is the era where like we were like half internet, really, where like we were still trying to figure this thing out. Like social media was still starting to take off. Like we were trying to figure out like, how is downloading a good thing or a bad
Yeah.
thing? Like people were trying to figure that stuff out. And so the concept of a patch for a video game just wasn't really a thing. And so
no.
I don't think many organizers really had to butt up against that problem until, like, again, I think you guys were the first ones to deal with that issue, where it's like, now I have to figure out how to get an internet connection on these stupid consoles,
Yes.
so that way I can download everything and burn all that time. I think that's a first.
Oh yeah.
It was definitely a logistical nightmare. It was a pain in the
Mhm.
ass.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember when we were trying to figure out how to hook up the PlayStations, because the convention center was like, "There's power right there. Do you guys have internet? We have power right there." Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did.
Where's the internet? You mean the stuff in our office? So you're just like, all right, we got to find a way to get internet in here and figure it out.
Oh man.
Now, I can tell you the worst was, I believe, MK9. It was either MK9 or 10, because you had to sit through 4 hour of story mode to get the characters. And there was
Yeah.
just no passing go to collect $200. You just had to eat it and sit there and just
Play the
go through
story.
4 hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
We all got handed a PlayStation.
Yeah, everybody. It was like a chore.
We all got handed a PlayStation.
Yeah.
Yep.
In any other circumstance, if someone gives you a PlayStation, you'd be like,
You're
hell
like,
yes.
yeah. No, you're like, this one's for you. Like, oh, fuck. Like,
Yep.
I already did.
It was like homework.
Do another one.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what as far as like scale and size goes, like I've alluded to the fact that like it's bigger, but like how many? And I heard something about 1,000 pre-regs at the beginning of of this episode, and so like. How big of a tournament are we talking here in 2010, Devastation 2010? Like tournament number wise, or just how many people do you think ended up being at that convention center?
Well, I think the numbers of the flow through that I heard, and this doesn't have anything to do with how many people actually, entered the tournament, but just going through there,
Yeah.
I heard that it was over 10,000.
Oh, that's wow. Okay, I was thinking like a couple thousand. 10,000?
Yeah, that is what I heard from the sec for that from especially 2011, 2010, 2011, over 10,000 people for sure. And again, not 10,000
Wow.
people that entered the tournament,
Sure,
nowhere
sure.
Yeah,
near
yeah.
that, but there's a lot of traffic, a lot of curious people walking through, watching the tournament. So I think over the course of, and it's multiple days. I think so when they give you these numbers, it's not a one-day number, it's the
Yeah,
course of the event.
because
So
that was
over
a
the
weekend
course of the
event.
event, I believe 2010 was around 10,000 people.
That's a very large
Weekend
amount of
event.
people. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then like as far as like game choices, were they any different than the previous year, or did you add any new games, or did they just all grow?
They did. They all grew because we got like Blast Blue in there
Mm,
and some more 3D anime fighters that weren't non-existent at the time. So as the games came out, the new editions of Mortal Kombat and stuff like that, then it would grow and we would add more and more tournaments, which was then be a headache later on.
okay. So, I remember entering the tournament, having a good time. Ultimately, I don't think I performed really well. I was still at the beginning of my life, of my tournament life there, or my competitive video gamer life. But at the end of the tournament, uh, several big names won, like from out of state and whatnot, and there was conversation about payouts. And we've heard from numerous people throughout the years and throughout folks, like folks that have been on our podcast previously, about folks that did not receive their payment from Devastation 2010. And I was curious if you guys could shed some light on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's it's a, I think it was 2011's, it shouldn't have been 2010. I believe it was 2011.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
2011.
I
Yeah,
apologize. So,
2011 was that one.
okay, 2011.
And I would be happy to shed some light on the subject because, quite honestly, this whole thing to all of us involved was a big thorn in the side because we did love this. We put a lot of passion, and to have something like this happen that's out of your control kind of sucks. But sponsors dropped out. So this devastation was the one that we were finally able to offer large prize pots, like $2,500, like serious pots. Well, all of this money wasn't Rob's. Rob had gotten sponsors. I think one of them was Steel Series.
Mm,
I hate to call you guys out, but I'm pretty sure that's who it was. Sorry. But there was some other sponsors. They all just dropped out. They didn't pay up. So they agreed to terms. Rob didn't get anything in writing. So this one of the mistakes that was made, because we're so new, is there was really nothing locked down in writing. Everything is word of mouth.
mhm.
And at the end of the day, the sponsors didn't pay up the prize money. So he didn't have the money to pay up after paying for devastation and everything like that. When you have $10,000, just drop out, and that you now got to pay people, it really put him in a bad spot.
I get you.
Now, as to my understanding, that ultimately he did pay them.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that for sure, but it was my understanding that he sold his comic book collection. Like, he didn't just do nothing about it. He
Mhm.
went immediately and went and sold things, his entire collection, and tried to come up with money to pay these people the money that was owed.
I see.
So as far as I know, he did pay them, but
Yeah.
I haven't asked him personally.
Yeah, that's the same thing. That's the same knowledge I have is eventually he later on paid them out. They didn't get paid right away, but at some point he
Mm-mm.
reached out
Yeah.
and paid them.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, I guess so. There are there's kind of like a through line here as far as like how Devastation's organization was run, and my belief here is that like it was built a lot on relationships. The relationship with the arcade manager, like Corey here, or the relationship with the Microsoft Store manager, or the relationship with the strip club and whatnot. And so it sounds like to me this was like when you're bringing in the big PC sponsors and whatnot, it sounds like the relationship lens that was applied to the locals was applied to these bigger corporations, and then the bigger corporations were like, big middle finger. There's nothing in writing,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
That's essentially what happened.
Okay. And I do want to just call out that there's a huge parallel to back then and what's happening now, because we as a fighting game community are at this weird growth spurt post-pandemic thing where everyone's like, I went to Evo this year and everything's crypto now, and there's a bunch of there's a lot of online gambling stuff, like sports betting. I think is going to get into the FGC and into esports pretty soon.
Yeah, for somebody that does sports bet, like that's actually something that's like on some of the sites. Like they have like certain events on there for like things already.
Oh wow.
Wow. So I'm seeing a lot of like FGC collides with big corporate interests happening lately.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like Devastation ended up with that in that position of being like we are ultimately like burgeoning it's a burgeoning esports world, but then also like now the big companies are trying to test their like dip their
Yep.
toes in the water, and if they don't like the temperature of the water, they're gonna pull it out and then wait a couple of years, which is
Yeah.
kind of what happened, right?
Yeah, that's literally what happened. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened to a T. It was just we were coming up, and then big dogs were trying to get in, but they weren't too sure. They'd promise something, and then because we were new, we didn't know how to handle it. There wasn't anything in writing, and then they didn't like it, so they pulled out.
Okay. So I apologize too. During this podcast, I think I conflated the Devastations. So to clarify here, so 2009 was at the convention center, 2010 was at the convention center, and then 2011 was also at the convention center, and that was the last one.
That was the last one.
Correct.
Okay.
And
So
the difference in size is, so the convention center has like 3 rooms, like 3 main rooms. Big boys and their toys, we were in one of the small parts, sharing with them. 2010, we had the middle of one convention center. 2011, we had the full convention center. So that was the
okay.
growth. There was incredible growth between 2010 and 11. We went from just one portion of 3 to all 3 of 3.
All 3 of them, and then that's why it hurt so much when the sponsors dropped out because it was such a big
Yeah.
load for us. We had tickets from Ticketmasters. We had promotion. Like it was a big ordeal because it was our biggest event, and
Yep.
we had all these sponsors that we thought we had all these sponsors.
We had experienced incredible growth from 2010 to 2011. This Devastation,
Okay.
really big. And so it was a really bad time for the sponsors to kind of pull out, and and what happened.
Were there any ramifications for the rest of the staff financially in addition to Rob? Did y'all have to chip in any money or anything like that?
No, I mean we all would have if Rob came down to it and would have asked, but like Rob would handle most of that, so he had his financial help with all of that, and he never reached out and helped. He kind of just took that burden on himself.
I see.
Yeah, we really weren't involved in any kind of finances. Rob,
Mhm.
like I said, he took care of the finances. He paid for everything. We were all volunteers. We didn't get paid, or we didn't pay anybody.
Okay.
All of that finance and all of that was really carried by Rob.
Okay. So then I guess I am interested in kind of a where are they now thing. So we talked at the beginning about this core group of 5 or 6 people, and two of those people are here with us now. But I'm curious about like what happened with Rob, what happened with Brian, what happened with the other Brian or Darren.
Well, Rob's been all over the place. He was at Ubisoft for a couple of years and Blizzard for a couple of years. He was doing a lot of their video games stuff. Rainbow Six Siege. He was the main guy behind that game, and we actually got to go out and help on a couple of events.
I'm sorry, when you say main guy behind that game, you mean development or like promotion or?
Yeah, all of it. Like all of it. He's accredited for a lot of that game.
Wait, Rainbow Six, which Rainbow Six Siege, the
Yep.
the really really popular one that's like an esport.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, he was instrumental in getting that game up and running from development. I mean, I was helping him do alpha and beta testing back years ago at convention centers and at Comic Cons because no one knew about the game. So this was before Overwatch, before all these games we were trying to promote Rainbow
Wow.
Six Siege. And he's credited. He was probably like I don't even know the title. He was the main guy for Rainbow Six Siege.
Okay. How about the other folks that you named there? Do you have an idea what happened with them?
I know
Yeah.
Brian Pacheco is still at his at the job that I knew he had before. Every now and then we Facebook or text here and there, but that's all I know about Brian Pacheco. Dr. Dog, I'm pretty sure everyone kind of gets feedback from him now and then. He does some reviews, some movie reviews, right, Corey, or something like that.
He's doing movie reviews still. Yeah, he still does game and movie reviews, I believe. Mostly movie nowadays, though. I think. I don't know if he's doing strategy guides anymore.
Yeah, Darren.
We'll talk about it later.
Darren is an architect at his job, so he's doing a job. I think he still works for Cox as an architect out there.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then Charles Driscoll, he was at Best Buy. He's one of their supervisors or their managers up at the Geek Squad there. Last time I heard.
Very cool.
So yeah, so we're all out there.
And you are part of Arizona's fighting game history, truly. For all the good things that happen and some of the bad things that happen towards the end, I think it's very important that we remember this and we write it down, and that future generations can kind of see, and frankly see the parallels yet again, see the parallels of like what happens when you get the big corporations involved with the grassroots organizations and how they relate to each other, collide, take
Yeah, it's
advantage of
always
each other. Yeah.
No, Arizona is definitely has a place in FGC. Arizona in general has helped a lot. We have a scene. We're known. People from California have been coming in here for years. Even before there were big tournaments, we've got players like Danny Mitsu, and we've got players like Scott. We've got, Cigar Bob, legendary Street Fighter player. We've got a lot of history out here, and a lot of people, have been coming out here for a while to play these people.
Mhm.
So, we've put a lot of things on the map. We were here for streams. Devastation was still a nice big major. I mean, we've been here for sure.
I get you. And it sounds like you're going to continue to be here. Like specifically
yeah.
you two. I was curious about what's next. What's next up for Corey and Yoshi here?
Well, at some point in time, we've been talking about maybe trying to run a tournament series again.
Mhm.
Really?
So,
Sure. Yeah.
there's some talks on the horizon for we have the right opportunity maybe the next year or two to start something up.
Okay. Just to be more probing here, Street Fighter 6. Any thoughts on running events for that? Are you allowed to share?
Absolutely.
That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
No. Absolutely.
That would be a
Yeah.
perfect launch.
Cool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Then
Yeah,
I'd
no,
like.
definitely still fully involved in gaming and the fighting community. It's in our blood.
So now we're at a point where our children are getting a little older. So that time
Mhm.
that we didn't have, we're starting to get back.
Yep.
Yep.
So now
Yep.
we're at a point in our life where we're kind of getting a little bit of time back. And now we've also got a
Mhm.
little more resources as well.
Yep.
So with a little more time and a little more resources, I mean, anything can happen.
Yep. I've been
Yeah.
dabbling, trying to get back. That's why I've been playing a lot more too. I've been trying to get back into tournament mode. So
Yep.
I've been casual a little too much. So I'm like, oh, I want to try and see how I do it at tournament now.
This kind
Runs
of
in our
book.
blood, man.
It kind of bookends our FGC dad conversation too, because this is a little personal, but when I haven't had any children yet, and I frequently I've just been thinking like, okay, eventually I grow out of video games, and eventually I have kids, and I go home and become a family man, right? And so I always thought that like I'm done at the end of that. But then as I've gotten older and I've gotten to talk with people that are reaching that point in their lives where their kids are old or growing up, and they're like, I have all this time now, I'm bringing it all back. And I've gone from the perspective of being like, my life ends once I have kids to
Yeah.
it's like a break, if anything, or if anything, it's like you get to share that with them, and then once they grow up, they can either choose to stick with
Yeah.
it or not, but then you get to go back to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's super
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, that's been my biggest thing. Like I said, like I incorporated my kids and my family into the FGC, and it's like even if my son didn't end up wanting to play games, or even my daughters, like I mean they've entered random tournaments like Tekken or whatever games that they liked at the time. They've entered tournaments, and like even if they didn't do that, for me, like it was more about like exposing them to the passion that I have for it, and just hoping that they see like like Corey was saying, like having like a good passion, good hobbies to to show them, and then
Mhm.
whether that translates to fighting games or just to anything else that they do, whether that's anime or whatever, they find a group of friends and just say, "Hey, my dad was real passionate about this. I'm gonna go be passionate about this." That's what I wanted
And,
to kind of like push forward with them.
I get you.
and add on to what John said, as far as, raising kids and then not gaming. So one thing that I found out is that if it's a part of you, you're gonna miss it.
Yeah,
You're a better version of you when you're incorporating the things that you love as well as your kids. You don't have. I learned that you don't have to give up the things that you love. You just have to balance the time a little more.
Yep.
But
yeah,
I love playing the games, and even as I get older, I thought it would be something I put away. But the older I got, the more I realized it was a part of who I was, and it was
yeah,
something that I enjoyed. I liked the way it made me feel, and I like the outlet. I like the camaraderie with the friends, and so I know moving forward, it's something that I hope, like I was saying, teach my children and bring them into, rather than feel like I can't do it. I'll
Yep.
feel guilty about it.
Yep.
I get you.
Yeah, because it's great to just sit there and play games with your kids, and especially
Mhm.
nowadays, a lot of parents are focused on work or focused on something else. And then when their child is talking to them about video games, they're just like, oh, that's cool. But with us, when your
Yeah.
child is talking to you about a game, you're interacting. You're like, oh, yeah, you can do this move with Ryu and do an uppercut after that. And then he's interacting back with you. Oh, I didn't know you could do that because I thought you can only do this and that.
Yeah.
And just to see that interaction that you're something that you grew up enjoying is now passed on to your child. They're
Mhm.
enjoying it and they're enjoying it with you. It's just like a full circle thing.
Very
Yeah.
fulfilling.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, just to jump on the Corey's point too, in terms of just gaming, like, that's something that my wife has accepted. Like, that's just who I am, right?
Yep.
Like, even if it's not like I used to play Call of Duty religiously, 9 p.m., like same group of friends, whatever. She just knows like that was my time from like 9 to 11, 9 to midnight or whatever, right? And then like I got burnt out on shooters. I left kind of those friends behind. I felt kind of bad about it, but I was just like, you know what? I'm done with this. But then like I find myself playing other things, like whether it was Slay the Spire, whether it was Tetris, whether it was Street Fighter casually, like fighting game stuff with you guys, like picking up Cross Tekken or anything. It's just like that, that's just a part of me, or Hearthstone, whatever. Like I'm gonna game somewhere. It might not be as much time as I put in before, or it might not be the same games that I was playing, or even playing competitively. But that's just who I am.
Yep, that's like I said earlier, it's in our blood. Like we cannot
Yeah.
stop playing games. Yep.
Mhm.
My wife is the same way. Like if I have the stick out, she's like, "Oh, you gaming tonight?" Like, yeah. It's out for a reason. Yeah. We can watch shows tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this has been both like a beautiful and illuminating and heartwarming conversation, and I'm really grateful that you guys took some time to talk with us today. I really appreciate it. Is there anything that y'all would like to promote while we close out here?
Just the fact that I know that Yoshi and I have been talking, like I said, about becoming active again in the next year or
Yeah.
so and wanting to run some tournaments and do some things. To what capacity that is, I'm not sure yet, but we both have an interest and a desire. And, there's definitely be conversations that we're going to have. It'll be something fun, positive for sure.
For
So
sure.
that's cool. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm always on board. Like, I've helped out like Armando Angelic with the undefeated stuff here. Me and my
Yep.
family with that. So it's just like, yeah, if
Yep.
if you guys need somebody out in the East Valley, like, I can help
Well,
out over here.
For
I mean,
sure. Yeah.
Arizona, needs another, like you said, undefeated. I think that we have a large enough scene to go full scale again.
Yeah, and then shout out to Armando and all that undefeated crew
Yep.
because
Yep.
that has definitely helped in the void of everyone was used to having some kind of major tournament with Devastation. Something
Yeah.
was going on every year, and then
Mhm.
it just stopped. We were just like, or well, let's go to someone's house, or let's
Yep.
go over here, or let's go over there, and then all of a sudden, undefeated started showing up. Just like, oh,
And the
we
one
have something else. Like, let's go that. So shout out to them because I've watched and I've seen it, and they're doing a great job out there.
And that's another thing. It's beautiful to see all the people that have stepped up, right?
Yep.
That's still, a lot of the passion, a lot of love. And as one thing, one door closes, it's nice to see other doors opening and other people stepping up and taking on the reins, and keeping it moving forward because Arizona does have a great fighting scene. We're very fortunate out here, that a lot of states don't have what we have.
Well, thank you very much for those inspiring words. We're gonna go ahead and close the show out here. You can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/Spiral Series, YouTube at youtube.com/Spiral Series, and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify under Absolute Guard. To all of you watching and listening, we appreciate all of you that have liked and subscribed and tweeted and retweeted and commented on our YouTube videos and replied to our tweets and whatnot. Really appreciate it. We welcome any kind of feedback you have. Feel free to leave comments anywhere you can. Thanks very much, guys. We'll see y'all later.
Thanks, guys.
So.